there is no such thing as a front ratio on a VA loan. So get that out of the equation. All right, so if I had to pick a loan to do forever, every single time it would be the VA home loan. By far, there is no better home loan than a VA home loan benefit, just because of the way it's structured and all the flexibility that it gives you. It literally is a multi-Swiss Army knife tool to be able to help a VA buyer get the money they need to buy the homes they want. Let me break down some of the specifics on why I believe like this is just the best loan program ever. So obviously with a VA loan, you know there's no down payment. So that really takes away one of the entry points that a lot of people have towards home ownership, is just saving the money that they typically need for a down payment. No money down is a great option. You know, the other factor that's really cool is that it pretty much allows for the seller to pay for all of your closing costs plus some more stuff. So if you're talking about structuring an offer that allows you to purchase a home with very little to almost $0 out of pocket, there's not another loan program that can do it besides VA. So some of the great things about VA are there is no minimum credit score requirement. I don't care what you've heard from other lenders or other loan officers, there is no minimum credit score. Meaning, if you have a 470 credit score, you can get a VA loan, but let's be clear, there's probably some things on there that are gonna hold you back. But your credit score is not the determining factor, your credit history is. And so for VA, they have a very flexible credit guideline, you know, the most flexible of any loan that's out there. So essentially, if you have made all of your required payments for the last 12 months and you have reestablished your credit, meaning you've got another account that you've been making payments on for at least a year, you have acceptable credit for VA. So you're eligible. That's one of the big pieces. Do you have acceptable credit? At the end of the day, you have to remember that the VA home loan is supposed to be a benefit to the VA buyer. So as an extension of VA, we get the opportunity to make the decisions. You know, is this a good idea? Am I going to harm the VA buyer by giving them an approval for this loan because they're asking for money to buy this house? So there's no minimum credit score, so that's off the table. You know, there's no down payment, so that's squared away. There's no requirement necessarily for assets or funds to close because the seller can pay for everything. So now we're really just talking about what's my income and what are my debts. You know, for a VA loan, there is no such thing as a front ratio. So you have front ratios, back ratios. What do those mean? So a front ratio means, or housing to income, is essentially what's your mortgage payment divided by your qualifying income, like your monthly gross income. Your debt to income ratio is your DTI, and that is what's my house payment, proposed house payment, plus any other financial obligations like a car loan or some student loans, maybe a military star card, other debts. You know, add up all those monthly payment obligations plus the house payment, divide that by your income, and that's your DTI. There is no such thing as a front ratio on a VA loan, so get that out of the equation. And there is no such thing as a debt to income ratio max either, so get that out. So you're talking, the full playbook is open on a VA loan. And there are some guidelines that talk about 41%. So 41% of your income should be used towards your monthly obligations like car loans and credit cards and student loans and your house. That just has to do with a guideline. The guideline says if your debt to income ratio is above 41%, you either need an electronic approval, right? Which means the system has run your income, your assets, your credit, and your debt through an electronic computer system, which we do all the time. And if VA says, hey, this is a good loan, you're good to go. If it says, hey, let's have somebody look at it, which sometimes we do, an underwriter who actually reviews the file has to manually underwrite it, you need to have certain requirements put in place. And so the reason why VA loans are so flexible is really what they're looking at is like residual income. You know, can you afford this house? At the end of the day, right? At the end of the month, once you factor in the mortgage payment, you factor in maintenance for the house, you factor in all of your other obligations, you factor in childcare, right? VA is the only loan that cares about childcare, so be mindful about that. And then they also factor in federal deductions, right? Social Security, right? Federal deductions for your taxes and stuff. So they're pulling all of your expenses out. And so at the end of the day, how much money does the family unit have to live on? So there's a specific VA guideline. All the lenders follow the same chart, depending upon where the property is in the country and depending upon the price point of it. It says how many people are gonna live in the house, and depending upon whether it's 1, 2, 3, 4, you know, how many people there, they've got a factor that says they want you to have a certain amount of money left over as your residual income baseline. If you are above 41% on your DTI or debt to income ratio, you have to be 120% of that guide. Some cool things about the residual income are if you're active duty, you can reduce that guideline by 5%. Or if you live in a city like San Antonio that has a high military presence and you're close to a military base, you have access to reduced resources, right? The costs are less because you can go to the base to get medical assistance or the military store, other things that have base assistance, you can reduce the family factor there. So if I was to pick a VA buyer and ask them, hey, is it hard to get approved for a VA home loan? I say, no, not at all. Some lenders shy away from doing VA loans because they are not more complicated, they're just more pieces to the puzzles, right? So same steps every time, just like in the military, everything has to have its place in its order. Sometimes things get asked the same way, but different times. And so you just gotta be mindful of those steps. And it's a great product. It's a great benefit. It's a great joy for us to be able to give that to the active duty men and women and the veterans that have served our country and the people that serve in the reserves. You guys really do things that we get the benefit of, and it's an honor to be able to thank you in this way, to make it easy and to give you all the benefit of a VA home loan.